Well, let's go ahead and talk about how we pick up these traumas from our ancestors. I know that sometimes, generations back, something may have been a fairly relatively minor event, but say your great great grandmother has learned to react in a, sort of a PTSD kind of way to that. And that gets passed down through the generations. And it wasn't that big a deal generations ago, but it sort of snowballs, doesn't it? So that now we, generations later, don't have any idea why we do this when something similar happens. How can we clear those up by using the genealogical regression?
Yeah, what you're saying is so important. There are studies that are being done now that are showing that up to 50% of our actual personality is brought through our DNA. And of course, we can use healing techniques to transcend those things. But what ends up happening is very much like what you've just described. You're having a challenge in the here and now. Maybe you're aware that your parent and or grandparent has had that similar challenge, and then it just snowballs. It could be something as simple as a negative emotion that an ancestor felt, or it could be something as, big picture as a war or something. But the energetic, we have energy fields within and around us, and when we have these stressors coming in, those thoughts, although they are not physically seen, they create energetic blockages in our fields. And it's hard to imagine, this might be a new concept for people. Like you said, we've been talking about past lives. We know we can heal at that level, but we really are sometimes embodying these blockages and carrying them forward from the ancestors. And you're exactly right. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. And I feel like, we are becoming so conscious through the Shift Network and others, joining together. We are here at this time for a reason to shift the consciousness dramatically. And I truly believe that when we wake up to the ideas that we're discussing in this Ancestral Healing Summit, all of the amazing speakers you have, it's bringing forward this message that if we can come together, shift these energies that have happened to those who have come before us, there is a huge shift that will come from that. Because I feel like we are living in a time of great prosperity in the sense that we have the luxury to have this level of conversation right now is a luxury. And so we have an opportunity on behalf of those who have come before us to really make huge impacts that are going to ripple out to all humanity, and it's very, very important. And so I'm just excited to be here. I think the summit, I'm so happy to see that the Western world is really opening up to these ideas more. It's just absolutely phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. I know that we in North America, at least white-skinned people, European descent, et cetera, we've sort of lost touch with ancestral reverence over the years, and I'm very glad to see that we're reconnecting with this wisdom that Indigenous people all over the world really never lost touch with. And I sincerely hope that our doing that is one of the last pieces in this puzzle. That as we heal our stuff, the ripple effects will really help the entire planet. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Now I want to talk about your book because I've read the book. It's got some wonderful examples of case studies, and if you don't mind, I'd love it if you'd share one or two with us.
Yes, I would love to do that. One of my favorites, we're talking about the reasons why people seek regression. So this one's kind of a combo of a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual all in one. So there was a woman, she was an ER nurse. And I think that every person alive at some point, no matter what career you're in, at some point you're going to ask the question, is this what I need to be doing? Do I still need to be doing this rather than something else? And so this is something that definitely brings people to see me because they want to know, is there something in my soul memory in a past life, maybe gifts and talents that we can tap into? And so people look into that. Simultaneously, this lady had migraines. They weren't really debilitating, but it was a challenge. And so, of course, she wanted to see if there was a source event that we could get back to let that go. And these kinds of issues, Lisa, one of the interesting things is, again, I'm going to always go to the past lives first. So we go and look at that. That's fine. But then somehow during the conversation, she happened to mention this idea about how we do really carry on things from our ancestors. And her mother had been a nurse. Her grandmother had been a nurse. And so they were a very caring, giving family. And this was kind of like the family business. And so we ended up meeting with mom and grandmother, and we traveled back into the past several generations where she was able to go to a Civil War battlefield and see one of her grandmothers, her several greats grandmother, out there on the battlefield, selflessly giving to others and tending the wounded. And so she came back from that. The answer was yes, that the migraines were, again, I mentioned a minute ago, we get chinks in our energetic armor. So there was a chink in the armor. It was contributing to these mild migraines. And yet the bigger picture, and what's so interesting about this modality, rather than taking them into past lives, and you kind of touched on it earlier as well, is that because these are ancestors, these are not strangers. This is not just somebody who I think I used to be in a past life. It's very, very emotional. And she just got really choked up and emotional about the idea about her family selflessly giving of others. And so she came out of the experience having accessed that source event, yes, but in a bigger picture, having answered the question, should I stay as a nurse or not? And she said, how can I ever complain again? Or how can I ever say anything when I see how selflessly she was behaving? And so she walked out of there just having a knowing that transcends, conscious awareness, let's say, that gave her a lot of inner peace. And so that was one of my very, very favorite ones.
Yeah, that was a particularly good one. I'm also recalling the one where the young man traveled to China, but he also got really sick while he was there. And I want to talk about that, if you don't mind, that apparently it's common for people to become sick when they visit their ancestral homeland. And selfishly, I want to talk about this because the same thing happened to me. I went to Scotland and got sick and spent like 3 weeks too sick to really enjoy my trip. And I mean, I understand there's a bigger picture, but is there any sort of preparatory work that we can do before traveling to, connect with our ancestors so that we can, more deeply, not just enjoy the trip, but to really learn from it instead of spending the whole time being sick? As you mentioned, this young man in China, I mean, he was almost devastatedly sick.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. Okay. Because I've been also doing research into this concept of spontaneous past life memories, which I call supretravy. So I think we have two different things that can be happening to people when they travel. One could be we're going back to a place in the past that we have had a past life. And if it was a wonderful past life, then usually we're packing our bags and we want to move there. But sometimes if it's a challenging past life, then yes, we might come down with illnesses, different things can be happening to us. And so we can take it from that perspective that we're going to heal our own past lives. But in this case, yes. And in some cases, if we know, I think you mentioned Scotland. I mean, I have ancestors in Scotland. If we know, for example, that these are places where our ancestors had lived in the past, as the man in the book did, we can definitely start to then understand that, wait a minute, if something happened to my ancestor in the past in this area, then there's healing that needs to be done. And there's many exercises in the book where we try to just, again, shed light over challenging situations, bring understanding, imagining energetic cords between ourselves and what I call unwanted influences. And then again, just bringing the awareness, sometimes just having the awareness this is happening can also just bring about a healing, as we know that, we do not need to continue to be affected by certain things. We're going to let them go and transform them. And so it's a really good point. And I think it happens to people all the time that we're getting bombarded by these inputs. And one aspect, again, it could be the past lives, but it certainly can be things that are brought in from the ancestors. Absolutely.
I wonder if you have, in any of your experience, come across somebody who in a past life was one of their own ancestors.
Yes, 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 yes. What's been so interesting, Lisa, is that since this book came out, I mentioned earlier in our talk here, I was doing this technique when I was guided to do it intuitively. But since the book came out, people are really seeking this work a lot more. And I think it's, again, we can talk about the work that the Shift Network and others are doing to bring awareness to this to the West. But I have been doing so many genealogical regressions lately that not too long ago, yes, I had a woman who went into her own past lives, went and met with the ancestors and realized that she was one of the ancestors in her own past life. And so that is an interesting thing, because I do believe, we choose our circumstance, we choose our friends, and we certainly choose our families. And I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. I feel like we're here as an embodiment. We've chosen to be part of this lineage to help to transmute some of these heavier energies and bring about change. And so in this case, if you've been in your own past life as one of your own ancestors, you really are energetically and spiritually committed to helping the whole lineage shift and change.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for addressing that one. I find that particularly interesting. So let's talk about the families that we are born into, that we've got this sort of spiritual work that we have intended. But why are families so challenging? How does that work with genealogical regression?
Not your family, Lisa, not my family. No, that could never happen. Oh my goodness, my friend, I'll tell you what, our families are here to push our buttons. I believe we're here to learn lessons, to engage with others, to heal. And sometimes, as we know, some of the best lessons we get are from some of the most challenging situations. And I believe we make soul contracts with people. And sometimes they need to push our buttons, because unfortunately, it would be wonderful if we could all just decide that we are going to, make transformation, take a healing class and do the work that we need to do. But I think sometimes, unfortunately, we are motivated by pain. Just that's more of how we do it. So normally we need something to be a little bit painful and a little bit challenging. And there's certain, rising above petty concerns and all the other things that our lovely families get to help us with. I think they're here for a reason. And really, you think about the difficult people in your life, and you could say, wow, they're making my life so difficult. This is really horrible. But the truth is, the people who are here pushing our buttons are the ones who love us the most at a soul level. They're here with us for a reason. And if we can learn to transform those things and learn our lessons, then everybody's better.
Yeah, that helps make it a little more more palatable, doesn't it?